Hi guys, today's video was prompted by a commenter on my 5 worst things about the drums video, which was a joke, by the way, where he said that E-kits were way better than acoustic kits because they didn't have all the problems that I mentioned in that video. Well, I said, I could probably think of 10 reasons why E-kits are worse than acoustic kits, and he said, okay, do it, so here we are, I'm doing it. Basically, just to preempt some comments that I know I'm going to get, I own a Yamaha DT Express electronic kit, so I'm not ignorant about the topic. I have one and I play it. I also have acoustic drums, and so I can compare them pretty informedly. The other thing I'm going to say is that there are some instances in which acoustic drums are not as good or preferable to electronic drums, although it's kind of rare and specific circumstances. So on to the 10 reasons why E-kits are worse than acoustic kits. So reason one is the most obvious and the most impactful to anyone playing an instrument: the sound of the drums. They've gotten a lot better recently. The samples have gotten really good. There's a lot of variation in the different dynamic ranges as far as like the tones that you're getting, because they do a really good job making those sample packs, and they still don't sound like real drums. And it's sort of genre dependent. If you play like technical death metal and you like that plasticky triggered sound, then it's probably fine. But if you play like jazz or something where you want the real nuances of cymbal sounds and stuff, you're not going to get it from electronic drum kits. Maybe it's possible someday in the future that you won't be able to tell the difference, but right now the difference is still audible. They don't sound as good. So that brings us to reason two. Maybe you don't really care that much about the sound because you're not in a genre where it's that big of a deal. So the next thing we're worried about is dynamics. So there's a way to set the response curves and the dynamic ranges of all the pads and all this stuff, but you're just never going to get the same response range as an acoustic drum set. Acoustic drums, you can just barely touch them and play. I mean, jazz brushes, for one thing, is a thing. You can just, the most subtle sounds. You can also hammer them really loudly, and there's no way for electronics to appreciate or replicate that intense range of dynamics. So from a practical standpoint, they are limited. You can set them to be loud, but you'll never get the softs. You can set them to be soft, but you'll never get the louds. So related to dynamic range is the third reason: feel. They feel kind of funny. You can get the rubber pads, which are ostensibly like practice pads, but I think they feel worse than the practice pads that I like. You can get the mesh ones, which are supposed to feel more like real drums, but I think they feel also kind of strange, and they're tunable, but there's no way to get a real drum feel out of them. And so sort of back to the dynamic range thing, if you're playing within a limited dynamic range, you start adapting your playing to what the drums will reproduce accurately, and so you're going to lose some technique. If you try to go back to acoustics, the feel of electronic drums is going to kind of mess you up in comparison. So for that reason, they are definitely worse. Okay, reason four is going to be the hardware. So if you buy a really expensive high-end electronic drum set, the hardware might be as good as a standard acoustic drum kit rack or whatever. But if you're buying anything under the top of the line, the racks are often proprietary to the electronic drums. They don't interface with acoustic hardware, and they're kind of janky. They barely hold up the drums in some cases. So you can buy a pretty cheap drum kit and get hardware that'll last you many years and be pretty solid. And acoustic drums, that seems to be pretty standard. Electric drums, it's sometimes you get it where it won't even hold itself up under its own weight. So I think the quality's lower overall. Reason five is expandability. With acoustic drums, you can always just grab another drum and put it next to the ones you already have, or you can just slide another cymbal into the setup until you've got more drums than you could ever play. Electronic drums don't have that ability. You buy a brain and it has a certain amount of inputs, usually 10 or 12 if you get a good one, 8 if you don't. But then you're stuck. You have to buy another brain and run everything separately, or you can sometimes expand them, but it's hard. You have to do a lot of work. You can't just set up another drum. So to really customize the size of your kit, acoustic drums are way better. Reason six is the fact that they're electronic in the first place. That means you have a power cord, and so you got to find an outlet. That means you have instrument cables, and you got to plug things in. That means that you have to then manage your cables. Means you're going to have to deal with shorts or broken cables. Guitar players have to do this all the time, and it's a real hassle of playing electric guitar. The electronic nature of the thing means that you're going to be dealing with problems that are not easy to see. Acoustic drums have problems. You could break heads, or you could have other issues, but you can see it, it's obvious, it's right in your face, it's mechanical. The electronic issues, diagnosing them sometimes is a problem, and that's a problem that you really shouldn't have as a drummer. That's a guitar player problem, or a keyboard player problem. Reason 7 would be the longevity of play on an electric drum set. Even if the thing lasts a long time physically, like there are still some 80s electric drums from the first generation that will still play, but it's going to be a problem if you wait too long after you've purchased it and try to play it at a gig. The 80s drum sounds were horrible, and the compatibility with modern drum kits, sort of maybe if you're lucky you can put them together, but it'd be weird. There's a whole bunch of features on new kits that they just didn't have on the old ones, and that's evolving all the time. So obsolescence is going to come up really quickly on electronic drums, whereas vintage drums, you can buy drums from all the way back into like the 1920s, put a new head on them, continue to play them today, and if you tune them up, people will probably not even know that you're not playing modern drums. There are some exceptions to this, but a lot of, like, old school Black Beauty snares sound amazing, and people want to play them today. People do not really want to play 80s or 90s electronic drums. The sounds are horrible, and they don't have the multi-zone triggering and all kinds of stuff like that. So how long it's going to actually be worthwhile for you to play? Much shorter than acoustic drums. So the 8th thing that I think is better about acoustic kits is the cost. Yes, you can buy expensive acoustic kits. Yes, you can buy cheap electric kits. But generally speaking, let's say you had a gig tonight and you need to buy a new drum set. Well, you walk into a drum shop with like $1,500, you can come out with 2 or 3 pro quality cymbals and a sort of lower mid-range drum kit that you could tune up nicely and play, and people wouldn't even notice that it was kind of cheap. If you spend that same $1,500 on an electric kit, you're not going to get the kit with the nice looking shells and the multi-zone triggers and the really good sample packs and the number of inputs that allow you to play a big kit, and you're not going to play real pedals and real hi-hat stands. You're going to get something that is a little bit questionable for that price range. So yes, you can get an electric kit for reasonable cost, but it's maybe not one you want to gig. Yes, you can spend a ton on an acoustic kit, but I don't think you have to be able to gig. That's the difference. Okay, reason 9, subjective, but the look. An acoustic kit looks cooler on stage than an electric kit. If you're trying to impress people, put on a show, the acoustic kit always looks more legit. So it's a dumb reason, that's why I put it at the end. But for some people, it's a reason. Like, that's the reason people play 2 bass drums instead of a double pedal. It just looks cooler. So if you're going to look cool, an electronic kit is not going to do it. And the only way you can even get close is to get one of those hybrid kits that actually has shells, but then you're so close to an acoustic kit, what's the point? Alright, last reason, number 10, the ability to jam with other musicians. I mean, physically, yes, you can do it. But sort of related to reason 9, do other musicians want to jam with you when you play an electronic kit? In some cases, yeah, they're not going to care, whatever. And it could be said that maybe if they have a problem with it, you don't want to play with those musicians anyway. But there will always be some set of guitar players, bass players, keyboardists, vocalists, horn players, you name it, who look at an electronic kit and go, "Nah, dude, why don't you play some real drums? You come back when you have an actual drum set." They just have an air of, maybe it's elitism, but I think it's real. People aren't going to want to jam with you if you bring an e-kit. So in order to have the most versatile ability to just play with other musicians, you kind of want real drums. They're going to not give you the attitude about it. So there you go. That is my list of 10 reasons why acoustic drum sets are better than electronic drum sets. And just to finish this off on a positive note, there are some reasons why you might want to use an electronic kit over an acoustic kit. One of those being low volume practice. You can buy the low volume cymbals and the mesh heads, and your acoustic drum set will then sound like garbage anyway. So you might as well just get an electronic kit, plug in the headphones, and practice to your heart's content in an apartment or in a duplex or with elderly neighbors. That's a great reason to have an electronic kit. Also, if you're playing a genre of music where it really doesn't matter, and if you're playing with musicians who just don't care, you know, having 100 kits on speed dial in the brain is actually really awesome. When you buy an acoustic kit, you have one kit. You can change the sound of it, but it's a lot of work. Change the heads, change the cymbals, change the tuning. So having the ability to dial up different kits, that's pretty cool. So, I mean, there's an upside to electronic kits, but I don't think that necessarily for a gigging drummer do those things outweigh having an acoustic kit. And, you know, I own both. I'm not opposed to going either way depending on the circumstances. So, anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.